My name is Catherine Tao, and this is the Data Standard Audio Experience. Today we have Mike Olsen, the Director of IT Division at All Native Group. And today we're speaking about the evolution of data collection. So welcome to the show, Mike. I'm excited to have you on the show today to speak more about the collection process.
All right, outstanding. I'm very happy to be here and thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, awesome. And could you just go ahead and introduce yourself, tell the audience about your background?
Sure. I have been inside of systems engineering, systems development, and database management systems for quite some time. I actually started my career as a systems engineer and worked for Sybase as a database management professional for several years. And then I got into program and project management and working into systems engineering and IT design and things like that. I've worked for multiple organizations, agencies. I've served in the military. And so I've always been around technology and computers. And I've always had an interest in data and database systems. My master's degree is in management information systems, and I actually served as a TA for databases and database management systems. So I've always had an interest around it. Data has played an important part of all the positions that I've taken and been involved in. And so it has always been of interest to me, even if that's not something I'm directly working in at any one time.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. And from your perspective, how's the data collection process changed from maybe the past 5 to 10 years to what it is today right now?
I think one of the most important things to understand is we've never really had a problem collecting data. Even back before computers became ubiquitous in all kinds of data collection, we were collecting data on paper, and we were filing it away in filing cabinets and different filing systems, and then we transferred all of that to computers. And so we automated the data collection that we were already doing. What has really expanded the amount of data collection are two things, and that is the Internet of Things, if you will, and the ability of social media to collect, information about people's habits that they're voluntarily putting out there. And it's not just the Internet of Things either. It's you carry around that phone that is, essentially a very powerful computer, and everything you do on that phone is creating data that can be collected and used in some way, good or bad, for purposes of business or otherwise. And so the ability to collect data is not just about how we collect it, but what we can collect. And the reality is that there is very little that we can't collect right now. And the limitations are really about our ability to have a sensor out there, if you will, that brings that data in, and then how do you store that data efficiently? Because the amount of data that we need to collect is exponential in growth.
Yeah, definitely. And data security is always a huge issue that many companies have to be very mindful of, just in case there's any security breaches and just making sure that there's privacy for users' data. How have third parties collecting data been a kind of pain point for this?
Well, that's a very interesting question because it's not just about security as much as it is about the ethics of how one uses that data. And, the protections around that data aren't just about the nefarious actor or the malicious actor coming in and trying to steal that data. That data can be used and that data can be manipulated, sometimes even with the best intentions, that can cause severe repercussions for the individual. And I think right now, most individuals don't understand the amount of data that is being collected on them, and they don't know where it's stored, they don't know how it's being used, they don't know who it's being sold to. And our legislation, our regulations are really around aiding the business side of data collection and data use. There is a lot of lucrative business that can be enacted using data. And right now, there seems to be a leaning towards allowing that to continue. But I think as far as security is concerned and as far as ethics are concerned, I think it's in the best interest of governance and the best interest of business, and also and certainly in the best interest of individuals that we start looking at regulations around how an individual's data is stored and how it is used, and who it's sold to. We need only look at the last two presidential elections to see how data has been manipulated and used to target individuals and groups of individuals, to influence them. Part of my military career was an information operations officer, and it's all about how to use data to influence a particular area. In our case, oftentimes the battlefield. But it depends on who is doing it and what they consider their battlefield. And if you want to circle that back around, once you sort of answer the question and look at what is it we're collecting and how we store that and how we use that, then it's, well, you now have this treasure trove of data that very sophisticated actors can use to do all kinds of things, good and bad. And if they aren't authorized users or don't have authorized access to that information, you need to secure that. This has become, a ubiquitous issue and concern that is quite clearly on the top of, or should be at the top of every organization's risk management list. And because the damage that's done isn't just from an economic standpoint or a financial standpoint. There are trust issues that come into this. If you have massive data breaches, instead of being able to influence regulation that can work for both the business side and the individual side of the house, you get knee-jerk reactions that then make sure that it becomes even more costly to secure things and do things because it's not necessarily the most efficient way to go about it. But security, to me, has always been the most important part of data collection and data storage. And it's not just outside actors. You have to worry about the inside actor. You have to worry about good intent. You have to worry about accidental access, people who aren't even trying to do bad things, where information comes out that can be used against the individuals that have information in a particular data store. So security is to me, should be at the top of the list of anybody that's involved in data collection. And here's the issue: everybody's involved in data collection. It's not just companies that do it for a living. It's not the Googles of the world or the Facebooks of the world, although they, of course, are the 800-pound gorillas in the room. Everybody that does business is collecting information. And even small businesses that are sending out invoices and bringing in payments and things like that, they're collecting information that needs to be secure. And unfortunately, they're also the most vulnerable. There are ways to work around that. The advent of cloud computing and the ability for you to put your business in a cloud setting where a lot of this stuff is taken care of for you can help small businesses take care of that. But then you're shifting that trust to that cloud computing company to make sure that they have their ducks in a row as far as security is concerned. So, security has so many multiple levels of things that need to be taken care of, from physical to personal to the technological side of the house, all of which need to be put together in one package in order to make sure that you secure this massive amount of data that's now available to just about everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many different moving parts to working with data, and just also talking about the ethics side I think is so important. It's something that not enough people kind of emphasize and talk about enough. So that's great that you were able to bring that up and the importance of it, definitely. And in terms of storing data, why do you think it's so expensive to store data? And do you think that the government should be regulating this more?
Well, so right, I always think that a market approach is probably better, right? There are lots of opportunities for public-private work where we work alongside the government to come up with, effective regulations. And being effective sometimes means that there are costs involved, but they aren't costs that are unnecessary because a particular regulation is inefficient or ineffective. So I think it's incumbent upon business to reach out to the United States government or whatever government and work with them to come up with workable solutions. I think you only need to look at the EU and what they've done around the use of private data and the regulations they've put around security of data and the use of information, to see what a good private public partnership looks like, as far as coming up with effective regulation. But as far as the cost of data storage, it's the exponential growth of data that you want to capture and store that is causing this rise in cost, right? Demand is so great and the supply is trying to keep up. I live in Northern Virginia. You only need to drive down the highway in Ashburn, Virginia, to see the amount of data storage sites that they are building. It is quite incredible. I mean, go on Google Maps and take a look at all of the different data storage sites they're putting there. And this is popping up everywhere. Manassas, Virginia, also outside of, in Northern Virginia, outside of DC, they're starting to crop up all up and down the highways. All you see are these massive structures where data is going to be stored. So the supply of data storage capability is trying to keep up, but it's not there. And so when the demand is this great, your costs are going to go up until supply catches up. But even with that said, I think from the technical side of the house, we can find more efficient ways to store data. One of the things that you learn as a database engineer and as a database management person is try to get rid of that redundancy. And so there are technologies out there that allow you to store multiple instances of data that share commonalities in a much more efficient way. But you're dealing with lots of legacy systems where a lot of times there's just throwing over the data that they've had on old systems to new cloud-based computing or cloud-based storage areas. And so it's not very efficient. There's probably lots of redundancy in there, which then, touches on the whole security issue as well. And so, finding a technological way to more efficiently store data, and it may not just be the servers that you're using or the disks that you're using to put the ones and zeros on. It might be how you're storing that data that lends some efficiency that can reduce costs. And then I think circling back to what we talked about before, probably one of the most expensive, variable costs that are quickly becoming fixed costs are security, right? If you are going to sell somebody the ability to store their data, whether it's their personal data or data from their business or data that they are collecting as part of their business or as their business, you have to be able to sell that security component to it. And that costs money because it's not fully automated to be secure. It requires human interaction, and humans are expensive when it comes to this kind of business. And so there are ancillary and associated costs with data storage that aren't directly related to how you store that data and what you store it on.
Yeah, and I'm also glad that you briefly touched on the efficiency of storing data. And so I wanted to jump into that. And how do you kind of envision the future of efficiency of collecting data and storing data? How do you think that will change in the future?
Well, it's interesting, right? So I am by no means an expert or even probably a journeyman when it comes to things like neural networks and stuff like that. But if you look at the frameworks around things like neural networks and stuff and how your brain works, your brain doesn't necessarily store, every instance that you saw the color green, right? It stores the fact that green is this thing, and anytime that you see something where the color green is a major part of how that memory is stored, it essentially just sort of pumps up that reference to green instead of storing yet another data point of green inside of that record, if you will. That is, I probably butchered that to most people who work in neural networks, but from a standpoint of how I look at it, that's where I see a lot of efficiency gains that don't necessarily have to do with, how many zeros and ones can you stuff on a chip or on a disk. It comes down to how efficiently is your database management system or your data management system capable of storing data and still being able to extract individual records while creating information for the people using it. And I don't have enough insight into all the different ways that this is being looked at and being worked on, but I know that they're out there. And I think, marrying that with the hardware side of the house, and finding better ways to store zeros and ones more efficiently, less energy, right? Making them more environmentally friendly, less, requiring less energy, and being, more sustainable, and making sure that they're more robust and can stand any kind of, natural disaster or other kind of attack that might damage that data. And then you have the whole, redundancy. You want to back up your data store. So as much as data is exploding exponentially, now you got to back it up. And so, think about it as like at a minimum, whatever you're collecting, you need it twice over. And so it just becomes a matter of the math behind it. And so I think anybody who's young and getting into this can look at, innovative ways of storing and managing data that will make data storage more efficient and frankly, more cost effective.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to say thank you so much for being on the show today, Mike. We really appreciate your time just speaking about your experiences with data on the show here today. We're trying to build a community where everybody can just network and collaborate with each other and just bounce off ideas from a data perspective. So, what is something the community can help you do?
So one of the things that I'm very interested in is two things, actually. Space-based traffic control. Eventually, people will be out in space and they will be flying to moon bases and space stations and things like that, or maybe flying out to asteroid fields to mine them and things like that. And just like we have to control air traffic here in the Earth atmosphere, we are going to have to control space traffic. Yes, space is very big, but orbital mechanics sort of defines where you can fly, at least in an efficient manner. And so that involves all kinds of data. And so finding ways to collect that data efficiently, utilizing our experiences in air traffic control here is one of those items. The next item that I'm extremely interested in is the automation of drone traffic control for delivery systems. It's going to become ubiquitous at some point that retail's providers, big and small, are going to want to use drones to deliver their products. And there is no way that human traffic control operators are going to be able to handle the amount of traffic. And that's going to require, AI or AI augmented systems and autonomous systems that are collecting enormous amounts of data and processing them at enormous speeds in order to be able to control hundreds, if not thousands, of drones flying at the same time all over, suburban areas like Northern Virginia, delivering packages here and there and doing that safely. And so to me, any kind of, data collection, tracking data kind of, those kind of things are things that interest me at this time.
Yeah, and that sounds super interesting, also super innovative and advancements in the future. And where can everybody find you online to connect?
I'm on LinkedIn. I would imagine there's a bunch of Mike Olsens out there. I've run into a few spelled exactly the same way. So you can find me. All Native Group is one way to look at for me. That's my current position right now. I also have my own small consultancy called Think First LLC. I don't have a website or anything else, but you can find me on LinkedIn, and please feel free to reach out. I'm always interested in connecting up with other people who are thinking in the same way that I am and are looking for ways to innovate and really to build new and better things.
Yeah, that sounds great. And to our audience, for more information on the data standard, you can find us at www.datastandard.io, as well as on our LinkedIn and YouTube channel. So thank you so much, Mike, for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you today.
Absolutely. And thank you for having me. Have a great day.